Hello and welcome to this recording about the topic of personal authority. In other words, how do we make our decisions, or yet again, how is our energy reaching its decisions? How we are making our decisions energetically as opposed to intellectually. Human design is very unique in that it provides guidance and specific description of this capacity that we all have as nine-centered beings, which is to have decisions that are based and rooted in our energy, that are not intellectually based, that are not coming from the mind, but they're actually based in our energy. And it's actually not us that makes decisions, but it's our energy that arrives at its decisions. And we can learn to track it, and we can learn to recognize it, and we can learn to uh, establish a functioning relationship with this felt sense that we have, or that we can perceive within us, and we can learn to perceive more and more and pay attention to it and let it guide us. To honor our authority is actually how we get to express our deepest calling, how we get to live out our talents, how we get to be ourselves. So let's take a look at this presentation. And authority is really one of the two main pillars of human design. We always speak about strategy and authority. Strategy is the strategy of our type. It is how we can ideally function in our everyday life, in our life in general. Each type has its own strategy. For manifestors, it is to follow this surge of energy and inform. Projectors are waiting to be invited. Generators are waiting to respond. And reflectors have their very unique way of functioning, which is tied to the lunar cycle and taking 29 days to really make any significant decision. Um, yeah, this strategy is actually derived from the mechanics of our aura, and it allows us to get to a place where we can be in touch and where we can perceive our authority, which is the second key element of human design. We're talking about strategy and authority separately, but ultimately it is a felt sense that merges, that we can learn to track and perceive and follow. And so let's take a look at these authorities that we have. There is a whole sequence of authorities in human design that we can look at. As you can see, there is 7 different possibilities of how our energy can reach its decisions energetically. And you can see that these are, in the top. These 4 authorities on the top part of the slide are quite rare. The lunar personal authority is only in reflectors, obviously, because reflectors have no center defined, as you can see over here. Then you have the environmental personal authority, which applies only to projectors, what we call mental projectors, because it involves definition in the mind. The ajna center is always defined, and it's either connected to the head or to the throat or both, but there is nothing defined, there is no definition below the throat. If there is a definition below the throat, well, then that takes precedence. That is more important in terms of decision making, because we're going deeper into the world of forms. We're going deeper into life itself. The G center is a source of what we call self-projected inner authority. Again, it can only happen for projectors. And only if there is no center defined below the G center. If there is, as you can see over here, ego center defined and nothing below the ego center, then we speak about ego inner authority, which can actually happen for projectors or manifestors. There could be a manifestor, like this would be a manifestor chart, or it could be a projector chart. These upper 4 authorities actually comprise around 6 to 7% of people. And the 93 or 94% of people in the world have one of these 3 lower authorities, lower in this picture, 5, 6, and 7, where the splenic inner authority relates to the splenic center, and it's about instincts and intuition and survival and health. And it can be an authority in a chart of a projector or manifestor, because obviously the sacral is undefined, so it's not a generator. On the other hand, sacral inner authority applies only for generators, because it is coming from the defined sacral center, and it's very much related to the generator process in general, as I described it in the recording about the generator type. And it applies to around 34% of humanity, and the splenic is around 10% of humanity. And then by far the largest number of people in the world have the emotional or the solar plexus inner authority, and that applies to approximately half of the people in the world. 50 to 51% of the people in the world have the solar plexus center defined, and it is the source of their decision making. This is where you reach your decisions energetically if you have this center defined. Now, it can be in case of a generator, it can be in case of a projector, it can be in the chart of a manifestor, obviously not a reflector, because reflector has no center defined. So as you can see, there is a whole sequence of authorities, and there is a system of priorities where whenever there is a solar plexus defined in a chart, it's always a source of decision making, simply because that's where we are headed as human beings. Solar plexus is the youngest of the centers of awareness. It's still being developed at this point, and it's about relational intelligence. It's about maturation through experiences. It's about process over time. It takes precedence before anything else. This is priority number one. Whenever there is a solar plexus defined, that is the source of your decision making. If you don't have a solar plexus defined, but you do have a sacral center defined, then you do have this sacral inner authority. And if there is no sacral and solar plexus defined, then and the spleen is defined, then that means you have the splenic inner authority, and so on. If there is no spleen, no sacral, no solar plexus, no root, then obviously you have the ego. If there is not even the ego, then you have the splenic, the self-projected inner authority in case of the G-center definition, and so on. So one is always more, or has more weight in terms of our decision making. And it relates to this process of being more and more immersed into the world, into the matter, into the life itself. This is about identity and direction. This is about how do we provide and make it on the material plane, the ego center. Spleen is about, well, how do we stay healthy and survive? Sacral is about, well, what about my life force, my sexuality? How do I apply that correctly? And the solar plexus is really this um, highest trump in a deck of cards. It's about this relational intelligence and maturation and development through processes over time. And so if you have that center defined, that's your inner authority. So you can see there are all these different possibilities, and some of those authorities can apply to only a particular type, namely the lunar. A personal authority is only for reflectors. Environmental and self-projector, it can only happen for a projector, and sacral can only happen for a generator. But then you've got these two, ego and splenic, which can happen in projector and manifestor chart. And then you've got the solar plexus, which can be for projectors, generators, and manifestors, all these three types. When we speak about the authority, when we speak about this voice of truth within, as I like to call it, we're really touching on this core message of the whole human design system, which is that everybody has their own truth, and your truth is your truth only, and it's yours. And you have a capacity to know, to perceive what it is. You can learn to track it, and it's something that's for you. It doesn't apply to others. We are unique individuals, and everybody has unique needs and unique trajectory in life, you need set of skills, talents, and we don't know how to get it out there, how to live it out, how to fully actualize our potential. But if we listen to this voice of truth within, it's going to guide us. It's this inner navigational system. It's this golden compass that's going to always point you exactly where you need to be at the time you need to be there, so that you meet the opportunities, the people, the situations that allow you to really fully live out what you're designed to live out, why you're here. Um, we can, as I said, we can be in touch with it. We can develop a strong relationship with it, and we can tune into this felt sense uh, of its voice, of its guidance. Basically, when once we start talking about specific authorities, in the in the later recordings, this is the introductory recording to the theme of authority, but in these specific recordings that follow, when you listen to the description of your own authority, it becomes quite obvious what I'm talking about. It's kind of unclear maybe to speak about it in this general way, but basically it's the voice of our energy, and it's not something that surprises you. It's something that you know. It's something that has been there your whole life, and we just need to make some effort and train ourselves to really shift our attention from the places where we're conditioned, and especially the places that are open in our chart, and shift it towards this indestructible, this really solid navigational system within us that can guide us. We can follow the energy and join the energy to be more present in our lives and not to stand in our own path. Ultimately, as any spiritual path, this is really the path of surrender, surrendering to the guidance that this authority, this voice of truth within, actually provides. Many times the mind can go against it or has different agenda or different ideas about how to do things. Um, mm, for example, very simple example, I have a sacral in authority, and it's really fun for me to observe when I go to a restaurant and I'm ordering some food, how sometimes my mind tells me, oh, I want this, I want that, I want that, and my sacral just doesn't respond to it at all. And my sacral tells me to get something else for lunch or for dinner. And at the beginning, I was stubborn, and I was making orders based on my mind. And then I realized that if I go along with the sacral, I usually enjoy the food better. I feel better afterwards. And it's just funny to see the disappointment in me. How, oh, I wanted to have this fried chicken today, and it's telling me I should have some vegetarian Indian food. I don't want that. And then when I get it, I go like, wow, this is so delicious. I love it. So it's very common that our mind goes against the authority, and it's not always. Sometimes, it's also quite common. It's aligned, but really the point is to be in touch with this voice of truth within and follow it. um, I'd like to quote my teacher Genoa Bliven, who said that the authority makes decisions about that which enters into us through our openness. Now, um, we know, that one of the things that human design system can provide for you is this guidance on how you can actually make decisions, which are decisions not made by your mind, but made by your energy. This is what the authority is about. But what is the authority making decisions about? Well, it's making decisions about anything that comes into our life. And anything that comes into our life, that is part of our life, needs to have a place where it can land, where it can reach us, where we can actually perceive it, where we can uh, uh, begin to relate to it somehow. And that is happening through the openness in our design. You can see, for example, in this chart where both designs are the same on the right and on the left. This is the same design, but on the left, you can see the definition is emphasized. On the right, you can see the openness is emphasized. In this case, we have a splenic inner authority, which is about instincts and intuition in order to be healthy and to survive. Well, this splenic authority, the splenic center, is one of the centers of awareness. This is where we become aware of things super fast, spontaneously. And this design is designed to make splenic, in other words, cool, unemotional, super fast, spontaneous decisions, even in situations where there is a lot of emotionality flying around, a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, especially in those situations, because that's when the person can easily get triggered by these emotions, amplifying it, because that's what we do in the open centers, as I described in recordings on the open centers. This is where the person is amplifying the emotions of other people, takes it deeply in, and can act based on these feelings, but that's not where the person has their inner authority or the source of this inner stability within them. That resides in the splenic center. So this person is designed to make cool, super fast, intuitive, instinctive, spontaneous decisions about anything that's emotional, that involves feelings, and it's not to say that they're here to cut off themselves from the feelings. No, totally not. But whenever in situations where emotions are involved, or in any other situations for that matter, their right way of dealing with it, of relating to it, is relating to it from this island of definition, island of stability, which is in their design, this definition in their design, and in particular, this splenic center, which is the source of their decision making. So, this island of stability is from where you can safely relate to the ocean of life. So the authority makes its decisions about that which is entering into us through our openness. And so we have all these different various modes of decision making. I'll speak about each one of them in their respective videos. There are three centers that are never involved in decision making, that never participate in decision making. Two of them are the pressure centers. Root is the center of physical pressure, adrenal pressure, this vitality and joyous quality, this fuel to go out and experience something. It's a super powerful motor. It relates to adrenaline. It's really this drive, this push to go out into the world and experience something. And that is never the source of inner authority or decision making. Head is also never the source of decision making, because it's really the pressure that starts the thinking process. It's the fuel for thinking. There are all these mysteries, confusion, doubts, questions, and all of that. This is never where we make decisions. And the throat center is where everything actually lands, or eventually lands. This is where we express ourselves by what we say, by what we do. This is the center of manifestation, where everything actually gets manifested and put out into the world through the throat center. So these three centers are never involved or never participate in decision making. Um, we have the Ajna Center over here, which means that Ajna is participating in decision making. Not that it would be what we call the inner authority, uh, because what it means to have an inner authority actually means to have a particular center where energetically that center is responsible for the decision making. The decision gets made energetically on the energy level for our whole design, for our whole being in that particular center. And that is what we call the inner authority, as you can see in these authorities that I've circled, number 3 through all the way to 7, from self-projected all the way to the solar. These are the inner authorities. Now, if you happen to have one of these first two, lunar and environmental, and you generate your chart in the software, it comes out and it says no inner authority. That doesn't mean that you have no way of making decisions that are correct for you. It just means that there is no particular center, energetic center, where you would make your decisions energetically in that particular center in your design. But you can still make your decisions that are correct for you. And therefore, Genoa coined this term personal authority that we can use, because it's kind of confusing to say you have no inner authority. Yes, they have no inner authority, but they still have their own way of decision making. So they still have their personal authority. So we speak about lunar personal authority and environmental personal authority. And I will not speak about the lunar authority here in any subsequent recording, because it's very much tied to the process of a reflector and the revolution of moon around the earth, and I've described that thoroughly in the recording on the reflector type, so I will not mention that, but I will speak in the next recording about the environmental personal authority. In any case, this involves the ajna center, not as the center where the decision gets made, but it is part of it, because it's always defined in the environmental personal authority. And so um, yeah, this is kind of the overview of what we're looking at when we're looking at the theme of authority. It is this voice of truth within. It is this guidance that we can listen, that we can establish a relationship with, that we can follow. And the whole point of actually following the strategy of our type, for example, to respond or to wait to be invited, in case of a generator or projector, the whole point of following the strategy of our type is to actually get us into a position where we can be aligned and listen and hear and listen to our authority. So these two things, the strategy and authority, actually uh, merges into this one felt sense of just knowing this sensation within you, this energetic marker, so to speak, that you can use as a signpost. It's like it's this sensation that you feel, that you recognize, that you perceive, and you just know, well, I'm not supposed to do this, or yes, I'm supposed to do this. And it takes time to work your way to that place where you are uh, safely recognizing this every time. It takes time and practice to pay attention to your authority, even though it's been there your whole life. It's just something that we were trained not to pay attention to. So we need to untrain ourselves, decondition ourselves to really start paying attention to this significant part of us, which we listen to as children naturally. So when it all comes together, since this is basically the last presentation, the last subject of the Living Your Design class, when we look at what's the outcome, the strategy and authority meeting together, we can look at the example of an emotional generator, where the generator is here to wait to respond, and more on that in the recording on generators. And the emotional inner authority is about waiting for emotional clarity, to clearly feel, to take your time to arrive at the clarity of feeling about what is actually correct for you. And so this response is something that you need to clearly feel, and then you know it's correct for you to be involved with something or not, to accept it or to reject it. And as I said at the beginning, if you listen to this voice of truth within, it's really how you really get to live out the potential that you carry. It's we have all these magnificent gifts, and we can almost say these archetypal talents that we live out only to a certain degree. Sometimes 10, 20, 30%, sometimes maybe 50, 60, 70 if we're lucky, but there is definitely a potential for improvement, and the less we stand in our way, the more we get to live it out. And to do that is really about surrendering the idea of how our life should look like, what our life should be, and surrendering to this guidance within us, which surprisingly, maybe not to some of you, but surprisingly, it really takes care of all major dilemmas. It just resolves the situations that we have no way of resolving, because it resolves it from a deeper level of consciousness, from this intelligence which is way beyond the scope of our intellectual mind. So that's it about the theme of authority, this introductory recording. I hope you find that interesting, and bye for now.